Mutual News. 70 days into his presidency, President Ronald Reagan was shot in an assassination attempt today. The president was on a typical Washington outing, addressing the AFL-CIO's Building and Construction Trades Council. When he left the scene of the union meeting at the Washington Hilton Hotel, the shots were fired. Mutual's Bill Grudy was there.
Looks like spokesman James Brady is on the ground, shot in the head. Man is being rustled to the ground. I see 3 shots, 3 on the ground. 3 people are on the ground. A man is being wrestled to the ground.
At the time Bill Grudy saw the shooting, it did not appear that President Reagan had been shot. Later we learned he had been shot in the left chest, the bullet penetrating his lung. The president is still in surgery and is reported to be in good condition. White House News Secretary James Brady, however, is in critical condition. 2 others were injured today, a Secret Service officer and D.C. policeman. The Secret Service immediately arrested a 22-year-old suspect. This is The World Today from Mutual Radio. John Harchie reporting.
Hi, Pat Summerall to inquire about the health of your lawn. Is it looking pale and thin? Are there bare spots? For a healthier lawn, True Value Hardware stores offer this prescription. Start with a quality lawn seed like True Test Sun and Light Shade Grass Seed. It's just $1.99 a pound, or $4.99 for 3 pounds. And to keep your lawn growing, get True Test Supreme Lawn Food for just $4.99 a bag. For all the supplies and tools needed to put your lawn and garden in top condition, visit your participating True Value Hardware store.
Where can you find a good price on auto insurance these days? Well, you can follow the lead of millions who found good, low-cost car insurance at State Farm. The kind of protection you need is there at State Farm's low rates. Plus, the good neighbor service you really can't put a price on. See your State Farm agent about auto insurance today. And while you're there, ask about a real value on life, health, and homeowners insurance, too.
And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
White House News Secretary James Brady was the most seriously wounded today. He was shot in the head outside of the Washington Hilton. He was rushed immediately to George Washington University Hospital. Mutual's Ross Simpson was there. Ross, what was it like there this afternoon?
It was chaotic, to say the least, when I arrived. An intern at the hospital who saw the x-rays of Jim Brady's skull told me the bullet did extensive damage to his brain. The bullet entered the forehead just above the eye. The intern said the prognosis is not good. As a physician, he said he would not like to predict the chances of survival for Jim Brady, but he said, let's just say that it is not good. People just don't survive massive wounds in the head like this. As I stood across the hallway from where Brady was being examined before he was wheeled down to the operating room, I saw his wife come by. She was ushered into a nearby room. A doctor, when they wheeled Jim Brady out and took him to the OR, a doctor told one of his colleagues to make 4 copies of the brain scans, because he said, we're going to need these at a later date. I want these copies put into blue folders and sealed in the vault.
Ross, as far as we know right now, what is Brady's condition?
There has been no condition put on it, and I think that that in itself says that it is extremely serious, critical. Life and death, I think, would be a good point to make at this juncture. I think that his life hangs in the balance.
You're listening to The World Today.
The hot, merciless sun is a killer. It can kill the luster, the beauty of your car's vinyl, rubber, and leather. Until now, introducing new STP Son of a Gun with sunscreen. That's right, an exclusive new sunscreen formula. The only vinyl protector that has it. Screens out the sun's damaging rays, protects and beautifies better and longer. Use new STP Son of a Gun with sunscreen, because the sun can be murder on your car.
A railroad train clatters across America almost a century ago. Its passenger, Dr. Matthew Shields, on assignment for the Red Cross. Wherever the rails carried him, Shields would convert the car into a classroom and teach first aid to America. First aid in a railroad car was only the beginning. Today, as Red Cross begins its 2nd century, we teach first aid and CPR to over 3 million people a year. It's still only a beginning. Red Cross, ready for a new century.
The last time there was an assassination scare in the United States was back in 1975. Former President Gerald Ford was in office. Threats were made on his life twice. Lynette Squeaky Fromm pointed a pistol at Ford. She was quickly subdued, and just 27 days later that same year, the former President Ford escaped unharmed as a shot was fired at him while he was leaving a San Francisco hotel. Sarah Jane Moore was convicted in that incident. This is John Harchie, Mutual News. At 25 minutes before the hour, the world today continues. Vice President George Bush was in Texas preparing to address the state legislature there when he learned that President Reagan had been shot. The address was canceled, and Bush headed back to Washington, where he's due within about a half hour. At the White House, Secretary of State Alexander Haig told reporters he was taking care of duties at the White House.
Constitutionally, gentlemen, you have the President, the Vice President, and the Secretary of State in that order. And should the President decide he wants to transfer the helm to the Vice President, he will do so. As of now, I am in control here in the White House, pending return of the Vice President, and in close touch with him. If something came up, I would check with him, of course.
The Secretary of State was referring to a line of succession in administrative matters. Actually, under the Constitution, if the President were to die or leave office after the Vice President, the Speaker of the House, then the President pro tem of the Senate would succeed the President before the Secretary of State. Haig was also asked this afternoon if there was any indication of a conspiracy in the assassination attempt.
There are no indications of anything like that now, and we are not going to say a word on that subject until the situation clarifies, of course.
Secretary of State Alexander Haig spoke to reporters a couple of hours ago. More news when the world today continues.
The Bell System presents Mr. Tony Bennett.
Reach out and touch someone. Reach out, call up and just say hi. Reach out and touch someone. Wherever you are, you're never too far. They're waiting to share your day. If you've left your heart in San Francisco or any place far away, pick up the phone and get close. Believe me, it really feels good. People from coast to coast, calling up friends to keep them close. Families who care so much, keeping in touch. Reach out and touch someone. Reach out, call up and just say hi.
When the President and three others were shot in Washington a little over 4 hours ago, there was confusion at first. Carol Pierce was among those standing outside of the Hilton Hotel right next to the assailant.
Well, I was standing right in front, and all of a sudden this arm comes out over my right-hand shoulder, and I saw this dark-sleeved person with a gun, and I heard 2 shots and saw the gun go off twice, and then I ran like a jackrabbit out of there.
Carol Pierce of Columbus, Ohio, talked with Mutual's Paul Henderson. Secret Service agency immediately seized a young white man, now identified as 22-year-old John Warnick Hinckley of Evergreen, Colorado. Mutual's Bill Grudy covers the White House. He was with the President outside of the hotel this afternoon. Bill is standing by now live at the White House. What was it like there this afternoon, Bill?
It was an incredible experience. As we were all walking out of the Hilton, all of a sudden, 3 or 4 shots rang out, and the first feeling went through my head was, gee, somebody has set off firecrackers. And then all of a sudden I saw Brady drop to the ground, and I saw 2 other people besides him drop. The President was pushed into his limousine physically, shoved very hard, and the limousine took off like a shot.
Do you think the President realized at that time exactly what had happened?
I don't know. I assume if he felt a burning sensation in his chest, he must have known. But the Secret Service agents were so quick that he was in, I would say, within 3 seconds of the time the last shot was fired. The President was in his limousine, the door was shut, and the limousine was out of there. One Secret Service agent screamed, "Get this blankety-blank limousine out of here," and it took off like a shot.
Thank you, Bill Grudy. You're listening to Mutual's The World Today. The House was not in session when the President was shot today, but the Senate was working. Senate Majority Leader Howard Baker announced the shooting incident and adjourned the Senate a little after 3 o'clock. Senator Barry Goldwater expressed his concern about the shooting.
If you count the 2 attempts that were made on President Ford's life, this is the 6th time since 1960 that attempts have been made on the lives of our president. It's only been a couple of hours since this happened, so all I can say is that we pray to God that everything's all right. Knowing Reagan as I do, he's a very strong man in very good health.
Senator Barry Goldwater. Senate Democratic Whip Alan Cranston expressed sorrow for the families of the victims.
It's also deeply, deeply tragic for our country that our president from time to time is subjected to assassination assaults, and that people from the highest to the lowest in our land are vulnerable to violence.
A 22-year-old Colorado man is being held by police in the attack on President Reagan. John Hinckley of Denver was wrestled to the ground just moments after the shots rang out. Paul Gleiser of Dallas, Texas, went to high school with Hinckley in the early 70s. Gleiser says John was not known for political activism.
It wasn't a discipline problem. He wasn't. I've made this point. 1971, 72, 73 was an emotionally charged time, what with the Vietnam War, and an awful lot of kids really did stand out. There was an awful lot of political activism in those days, and you kind of knew where people stood, or you knew where a lot of people stood anyway, and John was not one of those who stood out. He was not a far left-winger or a far right-winger. He was not a John Bircher. He was not a Students for Democratic Society. He didn't walk around with peace stickers on his notebooks. He just didn't stand out.
Paul Gleiser of Dallas, Texas, a former high school acquaintance of the man accused in today's shooting. In Denver, Hinckley's father has avoided any comment. Reporter Jackie Stevens has more on that.
Secret Service agents and officers from the Colorado State Patrol are surrounding the mansion of the parents of John Hinckley Jr. in Evergreen, Colorado. That's in the mountain areas just about 30 miles east of Denver. Hinckley's father is the president of Vanderbilt Energy Company. It's located in downtown Denver. The elder Hinckley ordered the company closed for the day, and he refused questions by reporters.
When John Hinckley was taken into custody in Washington, authorities issued no immediate details on his location. Then they deliberately broke the usual procedures for routing a suspect in order to avoid the security problems cited in the aftermath of the shooting of Lee Harvey Oswald in 1963. This is The World Today.
Here's a message from your Kidney Foundation.
Have you ever stood in line, my friend? Not for hours, but for years on end. Not waiting for a ticket for a show you want to see, but just for the chance to live life normally. Waiting for the gift of life. Pass it on, pass it on. Give the gift of life. Pass it on, pass it on. Somewhere someone depends on you. You can give the gift of life and help someone who depends on you by becoming an organ donor. You can sign a special line on your driver's license or get an organ donor card from your Kidney Foundation. A moment to sign could mean a lifetime to others. Remember, we're talking about life. Pass it on, pass it on. Give the gift of life. Pass it on, pass it on. Somewhere someone depends on you.
Two of President Reagan's three children who live in California were described as in a state of shock this afternoon when they learned their father had been shot and wounded in Washington. Maureen Reagan, a radio talk show hostess in Los Angeles, reportedly was surrounded by Secret Service agents and moved to a safe location. President Reagan's oldest son, Michael, is keeping up on the situation from his home in Sherman Oaks, California. He says he's been receiving encouraging reports from the hospital in Washington. Though saddened by the events, Michael Reagan is confident that his father will pull through in fine fashion.
My father's a strong person, and he's in good shape, and he's going to pull through this tough time and just put it in the back of his mind and probably go out to the ranch at the end of April and cut some firewood, go to my sister's wedding, and run the country.
President Reagan's son, Michael. One of the president's closest aides this afternoon attempted to squelch rumors about the conditions of both the president and presidential spokesman James Brady. Mutual's Jim Slade has an update.
Contrary to reports heard in other areas, not on this network, but on other areas, the president has not undergone open-heart surgery. The surgery is to his chest. The bullet did not touch the heart. His condition is reported by the doctors in the operating theater good and stable, and he should be out of the operating room soon. The rumors about press spokesman Jim Brady dying are also not true. However, the president's longtime aide and friend, Lim Nofziger, told reporters that he is not able to give us a condition report at this time, although Brady is being taken care of. But the rumors about his death are not true. The president's condition is good. It is stable. He saw his wife before the operation began. He joked with her, "Honey, I forgot to duck." Before he went under the anesthetic in the operating room, he told the doctors, "I sincerely hope you can tell me you're Republicans."
Mutual's Jim Slade reporting from outside of George Washington University Hospital. More news on the world today in 1 minute.
People come into contact with chemicals every day, and like the modern automobile, some chemicals can be hazardous if not handled properly. Understanding and using chemicals safely is important to everyone, from the student in the chemistry laboratory to the consumer looking over the grocery shelf. Members of the American Chemical Society help to develop safety standards for the workplace, advise our government on regulations, and provide assistance to teachers and students. Helping you to use chemicals safely is important to us and to you. Read and carefully follow the instructions on chemical containers. Keep all chemicals, from household cleansers to medicines, out of the reach of children. Never transfer medicines from childproof bottles to containers that are more easily opened. The safe use of chemicals is one of our major concerns. A message from this station and your local section of the American Chemical Society.
While much of the world's attention was focused on the assassination attempt today, there were some key developments in other major news events. The hijacking incident that started Saturday morning on an Indonesian airliner ended today. Among the 55 hostages who were held on that plane were 2 Americans. Mutual's Rick Tompkins in Bangkok told Mutual News Thai and Indonesian commandos suddenly walked up to the aircraft, placed ladders on the plane, and then boarded it.
There was a sudden burst of gunfire. Immediately, a 4-year-old girl, the youngest of the hostages, was passed out the front door. There's another burst of gunfire, and then more hostages started coming out the doors and crawling away from the plane on their hands and knees. At one point, a man believed to be a hijacker came out onto the wing with a soldier behind him, and there is a pop. The man pitched forward onto the tarmac dead. Within 9 minutes, it was all over.
Mutual's Rick Tompkins in Bangkok reports 3 people were killed. At least one of them was one of the hijackers. There were also injuries among the hostages on board that hijacked plane in Thailand, but there are no details on just who was injured. In Poland, the Solidarity Union suspended the general strike that had been set for tomorrow. Poland's independent union leadership will meet to decide whether to call off that threatened nationwide strike altogether. The Polish government and union leaders had negotiated 7 hours today before the announcement postponing the strike. The Academy Awards Oscar presentation that had been scheduled for tonight has been postponed until tomorrow night because of the shooting this afternoon of President Reagan. You're listening to The World Today from Mutual Radio.
On the road with Quaker State is where you're gonna be. Staying on the road with Quaker State, running long and trouble-free.
Introducing Quaker State's Lifetime Engine Lubrication Protection Program, the only program that can give you guaranteed protection in writing against oil-related failure for any new car engine as long as you own it.
You'll be staying on the road, staying on the road, staying on the road with Quaker State.
This exclusive protection program is from Quaker State, the oil that guarantees its quality and now guarantees protection for any new car engine using only Quaker State. Call toll-free 800-528-6050 for participating new car dealer near you. He'll provide coverage and details of limited warranty. That's 800-528-6050. New car or old, you'll be staying on the road with Quaker State.
You'll be staying on the road, staying on the road, staying on the road with Quaker State.
The latest report we have is that President Reagan is still in surgery. He's expected to be out of surgery in about 10 minutes' time. Mutual's Bill Grudy is standing by at the White House. Bill, has there been any new development or any new word on the president's condition?
Nothing from here, John. Everybody is just waiting for a word. I believe they've made an informal decision not to say anything until the president is out of surgery and they have the official report on his condition in their hand.
Have you heard, too, that surgery should be completed shortly?
Yes, I have. That it should take 1 hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours, and I guess we're a little over that now, but we're expecting word any time now.
And once again, it might be good to go over just what we know about what surgery was involved and where the president was wounded today.
I'm not that familiar. You might might catch somebody from the. He was the left lung. The lung was partially collapsed. That much I know.
Right.
And
Ross Simpson is with me. He was at George Washington University Hospital earlier today. Ross, what were you able to learn about the president's injury?
A doctor told me that the president had been shot on the left side of the lung and placed the bullet wound about an inch from the heart. And he was quoting a friend who was in charge of the treatment being administered to Mr. Reagan at that time. That was my source of information. And that bullet wound caused some internal bleeding, and that accumulation of blood caused the left lung to collapse. They had to plug in chest tubes and drain that cavity of the diaphragm.
Was there some special concern because the president is 70 years old?
Well, in a situation like this, you've got a man 70 years old, you've got a traumatic wound. Yes, indeed, there is concern. The concern there was, could his right lung be oxygenated enough? In other words, could it be inflated enough to do double duty? Could it carry on the load while the surgeons opened Mr. Reagan's chest and assess the damage inside, and at the same time try to stop the bleeding?
Ross, you also were able to talk with some people about James Brady, the White House press secretary, who was critically injured.
I spoke to an intern who was assigned to the SCAT unit, the brain scan unit, which had taken the pictures of Mr. Brady's skull and the brain area, and he said the bullet wound was of a great magnitude. It did an extremely amount of damage to the brain itself and to the cranium, and he did not say that the prognosis was good.
The Secret Service agent who was wounded, Ken McCarthy of Chicago, was also taken to George Washington Hospital. Were you able to learn anything about his condition?
No, but just across the wires a few moments ago, there's encouraging word about McCarthy. He is said to be in stable condition, so he is slightly improving. He took a bullet in the chest area, and we have two other officers also who were wounded.
And, well, there were two other, I believe we have a District of Columbia police officer who was wounded and taken to Washington Hospital.
Yes, we have no condition report on him.
Okay, thank you, Ross. President Reagan is actually the 7th president in this century who was the target of an assassination attempt. Two of them, William McKinley and John Kennedy, were killed. The shots fired at Reagan today mark the first assassination attack since two women tried to shoot President Ford in separate incidents in Northern California back in September of 1975. This is the world today.
For you, young men and young women looking at your future, what's it going to be? College or something else? If you're a high school senior, the choice you make could be the most important one you'll ever make. On to college or not. At the American Legion, we don't think you should make that decision without first getting all of the facts. And that includes complete information on the many sources of financial assistance available. So we have compiled a reference booklet for the prospective college student, like yourself, who might need a lift. And that's what we at the American Legion call it. Need a lift? It's a valuable booklet. It lists hundreds of grants, loans, and scholarships. It's a booklet for all young Americans, parents, and school counselors. For your copy of Need a Lift, all you've got to do is contact your local American Legion post. We're looking out for you. It's part of what the American Legion is all about.
7 presidents this century, targets of assassination attempts. That brings about the question of, is there anything we can really do to try to prevent this from happening in our society? Bill, is there any thought on that from the White House?
Well, John Kennedy said before his tragic assassination that no, there wasn't. If somebody is bent on shooting the president, that he's going to be able to do it. And I would say that today the Secret Service, the security was tighter than usual because of the large crowd there. There were more agents around. So the president would have more reason to feel safe this time. And yet somebody did get through, did penetrate that line into the press bin, and was able to get off a couple of shots. Several cameramen have complained over the past couple of weeks that too many non-press people are being allowed in the press area. I don't know if this is going to be a formal complaint now after this incident, or what the Secret Service is going to do.
It seems this is one of the first times recently, right in Washington, there's been an incident of this kind. Usually the Secret Service seems to have a pretty good handle of how to protect the president here in the nation's capital.
Just the logistics of this place, though. He was coming around a wall, and the crowd was butted up against the press area, so it was very easy for somebody to sneak across.
Thank you, Bill Grudy, reporting live from the White House. The nation's stock exchanges closed almost an hour early today when there was word that President Reagan had been wounded. The prices were dropping. The Dow was off about 3 points to 992 when the New York Exchange closed. A reminder, Mutual News will continue live, continuous coverage of the assassination attempt today at 5 minutes past the hour. This has been The World Today from Mutual Radio. I'm John Hartshee in Washington.
Doctors say the bullet missed his heart by 1 inch. That's one detail on President Reagan's condition, provided by Mutual correspondent Ross Simpson, whose source is a doctor at George Washington University Hospital. Correspondent Simpson briefed fellow reporters at the hospital. He says the president sustained a gunshot wound just on the left side of the left lung. Doctors told Simpson that caused internal bleeding and that doctors worked to stop the bleeding and drain the accumulated blood. The president is still in surgery, but the bullet was not removed. Doctors say that can be done later. President Reagan was wounded today as he left the Washington Hilton Hotel, a short distance from the White House, after addressing a labor group inside the hotel. White House Press Secretary James Brady, a Secret Service agent, and a Washington policeman were also hit in the gunfire. Brady is listed in serious condition. The Secret Service agent is stable. The policeman listed as critical. The suspect has been identified as 25-year-old John Hinckley, Jr. of Evergreen, Colorado. This is Mike McKinley for Mutual Lifestyle Reports.
According to the Wall Street Journal, there's a budget-cutting mood spreading on Capitol Hill, and President Reagan may even get some extra reductions. Have a pencil ready for an important offer from the Journal that will help keep you apprised of everything happening anywhere that could affect your future and your company's future. Recent Wall Street Journal articles revealed who's profiting from the Great American Drought, which income tax preparation service might be right for you, why advertisers are learning to respect the elderly, the facts on the largest takeover bid ever, and the likely move by major auto manufacturers that could mean a radical change in collective bargaining. The Wall Street Journal. It's all the business news you need when you need it. Right now, you can get 52 weeks of the Journal, one for every business day of the year, for less than $1.50 per week. That's just $77 a year. So, if you're serious about business, in the continental U.S., call toll-free 800-331-1000. That's 800-331-1000. Except in Oklahoma, you'll be billed later.
It began as an everyday scene surrounding the President of the United States. Ronald Reagan finished speaking to a conference of the AFL-CIO and was emerging from the Washington Hilton Hotel, about a mile from the White House, at about 2:30 this afternoon. A large crowd of reporters who follow the President were waiting outside. Other bystanders watched from across the street, and as Mr. Reagan stepped outside, some of the newsmen shouted questions at him. The President turned, smiled, and lifted his arm high to wave at the spectators. Already he was next to his limousine, just a few steps outside the hotel entrance. Suddenly, from the midst of the crowd came a rapid succession of cracking sounds. The President reacted immediately and appeared stunned. The smile on his face turned to a look of concern, and aides and Secret Service men were instantly around him, shoving him into his limousine as other agents drew their weapons. The limousine then sped off and headed to George Washington University Hospital. Left behind was a scene of chaos as police wrestled with a young sandy-haired man. Uniformed policemen and Secret Service agents encircled the suspect at once. Some of the bystanders scrambled to help 3 men who lay wounded on the ground. White House News Secretary James Brady was bleeding profusely from a head wound. He's now listed in serious condition. A Secret Service agent and a local policeman were also wounded. The President is still in surgery, and his condition is said to be good and stable. This is Mike McKinley for Mutual Lifestyle Reports.
According to the Wall Street Journal, there's a budget-cutting mood spreading on Capitol Hill, and President Reagan may even get some extra reductions. Have a pencil ready for an important offer from the Journal that will help keep you apprised of everything happening anywhere that could affect your future and your company's future. Recent Wall Street Journal articles revealed who's profiting from the Great American Drought, which income tax preparation service might be right for you, why advertisers are learning to respect the elderly, the facts on the largest takeover bid ever, and the likely move by major auto manufacturers that could mean a radical change in collective bargaining. The Wall Street Journal. It's all the business news you need when you need it. Right now, you can get 52 weeks of the Journal, one for every business day of the year, for less than $1.50 per week. That's just $77 a year. So, if you're serious about business, in the continental U.S., call toll-free 800-331-1000. That's 800-331-1000. Except in Oklahoma, you'll be billed later.
Mutual News. Doctors at George Washington Hospital in Washington report the outlook for President Reagan is optimistic. The president is still in surgery to remove a bullet which lodged near his lung in his left chest following an afternoon assassination attempt. The president's press secretary, James Brady, was critically wounded in the head and is reported clinging to life. A Secret Service agent and a Washington, D.C. policeman were also seriously wounded in the attack outside a Washington hotel. FBI spokesman David Devon in Washington tells us what lays ahead for the alleged gunman, 22-year-old John Hinckley.
Investigation is now belong to the FBI. He will be arraigned, brought before a magistrate or federal district judge, be advised of his rights. If he doesn't have an attorney, of course, he'll have the opportunity to have one appointed. They'll explain the charges to him, and that's about the extent of it.
FBI spokesman David Devon in Washington. This is news from Mutual Radio. Sally Beckner reporting.
The sun is a thief. It can rob your car's vinyl, rubber, and leather of its beauty, luster, of its value. Stop that thief with STP's new Son of a Gun with sunscreen. That's right, sunscreen. It's the only vinyl protector with an exclusive sunscreen formula that screens out the sun's damaging rays. STP's Son of a Gun with sunscreen shines brighter, protects longer, and leaves a fresh, clean scent. Don't let the sun rob you blind.
I'm Walter Cronkite. This is the song of the humpback whale. Marine animals like the humpback are threatened by pollution. When we foul our oceans, we disturb a delicate web of life on which every creature depends, including man. We all share the gifts of a living sea. Help protect this priceless resource. Write National Wildlife Federation, Washington, D.C., 20036. We care about oceans.
The would-be assassin who opened fire on the presidential party this afternoon with a .22 caliber pistol has been identified as 22-year-old John Hinckley of Evergreen, Colorado. The Secret Service says the young white man appeared to be acting alone. A television cameraman who was about 10 feet from President Reagan said the alleged assailant just opened up and continued squeezing the trigger. The cameraman said it appeared Hinckley penetrated the press corps standing outside the Washington Hilton Hotel. Eyewitness Carol Pierce of Columbus, Ohio, tells Mutual the gunman reached over her right shoulder to empty his pistol.
I was just shocked that it was just so unreal. You know, I saw the gun and the shots going off, and I said, what? And I just couldn't imagine that happening. You know, it just seemed so unreal.
Eyewitness to the assassination attempt, Carol Pierce. The Senate halted all legislative business soon after the news reached the halls of Congress. Senator Edward Kennedy, who has lost 2 brothers at the hands of assassins, issued a statement saying, with our prayers for those who have been wounded, must go our resolution to rid society of hatred. Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater, a longtime conservative ally of Reagan, says gun control would not prevent incidents like today's shooting.
I don't know how you can protect a man when a fellow has a gun. If a man wants to kill you, he's going to kill you. I don't care how many Secret Service men you have. The gun isn't the problem. The problem's the man.
Republican Senator Barry Goldwater. You're listening to Mutual News.
According to the Wall Street Journal, there's a budget-cutting mood spreading on Capitol Hill, and President Reagan may even get some extra reductions. Have a pencil ready for an important offer from the Journal that will help keep you apprised of everything happening anywhere that could affect your future and your company's future. Recent Wall Street Journal articles revealed who's profiting from the Great American Drought, which income tax preparation service might be right for you, why advertisers are learning to respect the elderly, the facts on the largest takeover bid ever, and the likely move by major auto manufacturers that could mean a radical change in collective bargaining. The Wall Street Journal. It's all the business news you need when you need it. Right now, you can get 52 weeks of the Journal, one for every business day of the year, for less than $1.50 per week. That's just $77 a year. So, if you're serious about business, in the continental U.S., call toll-free 800-331-1000. That's 800-331-1000. Except in Oklahoma. You'll be billed later.
Vice President Bush has flown back to Washington. He learned the news about the assassination attempt while on a visit in Texas. Mutual's live, uninterrupted coverage of today's assassination attempt on President Reagan continues at 5 minutes past the hour. Sally Beckner, Mutual News.
From Mutual News headquarters in Washington, D.C., I'm John Bascom, Mutual News, with continuous coverage of the news of the day that President Ronald Reagan was shot in the chest by a gunman outside a Washington hotel. For President Reagan, it started out as an average day, going to the Washington Hilton Hotel to address a convention of the AFL-CIO. He gave a short speech there, and approximately 2:20 to 2:25 in the afternoon, he began his way out of the hotel and back to the limousine, which would take him for about a short mile and a half ride back to the White House. Once outside the hotel, making the short trip from the hotel's door to the limousine door, someone, a gunman, apparently opened fire, shooting, we're told, 5 or 6 shots. 3 people immediately dropped to the pavement. They were White House Press Secretary Jim Brady, Thomas Delahanty, a D.C. policeman, and Tim McCarthy, a Secret Service agent who was standing by the rear door to the presidential limousine as Mr. Reagan was making his way towards the limousine. These 3 men were shot. We're told that Tim McCarthy is in serious but stable condition. Police officer Thomas Delahanty was in critical condition this afternoon. And the condition of Press Secretary Jim Brady remains, we're told, very serious. There were, in fact, reports earlier today that he had died. Those reports were quickly denied by the White House press office. The president initially did not appear to be hurt. In fact, the first reports from the scene were that he had escaped injury. A Secret Service agent following close behind the president grabbed him by the back of the head and shoved him, literally shoved him into the back seat of the limousine. And it looked like that might have saved him from any harm. Later, however, we were told, after he was taken to George Washington University Hospital, that the president had indeed been shot. A bullet, presumably .22 caliber long, entered the president on the left side of the chest, underneath his left arm, and apparently punctured a lung. The president is, we are told, at this moment still on the operating table where he has been for a couple of hours for surgery that may or may not remove that bullet. Some doctors presume that the president might be better off if they can simply stop the bleeding and get him patched up rather than go in for what would be rather delicate exploratory surgery on a 70-year-old man. One of President Reagan's key political aides, Lynn Nofziger, this afternoon tried to set the record straight on the conditions of both President Reagan and presidential press aide Jim Brady.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. The president has not undergone open heart surgery, has not undergone open heart surgery. That is number one. Number two, the rumors about Jim Brady dying are absolutely untrue. I really have nothing more to say, and I would prefer no questions. We'll get a doctor over here, and we will, as soon as we can. The president's condition is good, and remains stable.
And repeating what aide Lynn Nofziger just said, there is no reason to presume that the condition of President Reagan is anything other than good. He did, in fact, walk into the hospital under his own steam. And as he was being wheeled into the operating room, he told his wife, Nancy, "Honey, I forgot to duck." He also looked up at the doctors who were attending him and said jokingly, "I hope you're Republicans." Vice President George Bush was in Texas when all of this broke loose in Washington today. He canceled his plans to address the Texas state legislature and flew back to Washington. He says that it looks like he's going to be in total control of himself. That was according to Secretary of State George Strait down in Texas. Alexander Haig, the Secretary of State, and other cabinet officers were summoned to the White House this afternoon. And Haig told reporters around 3:30, 4 o'clock, as the vice president was en route back to Washington, that he, Haig, would be in control of the government for the time being. This is unofficial, of course. Mr. Reagan is still president, and there has been, and we expect there will be, no official transition of power, even to Vice President George Bush, not unless the condition of the president should suddenly and unexpectedly turn for the worse. At the District of Columbia Police Department this afternoon, spokesman Joe Gentile held a couple of briefings to tell us from the local security standpoint what happened. One of the three victims who were dropped by the gunman was Thomas Delahanty. He is a 45-year-old patrolman with the Canine Patrol and a veteran of 17 years on the District of Columbia Police Force. The other victims, as we mentioned earlier, were Tim McCarthy, a Secret Service agent who was holding the rear door for the president, and the president's press secretary, James Brady. Brady is a former Chicago public relations man, known for his wit when he deals with reporters. He's 40 years old, and he was shot as he accompanied the president from the Washington Hilton Hotel. Brady was sort of a late bloomer in Reagan's presidential campaign, joining the effort only after his first choice had dropped out of the race. That was former Texas Governor John Connally. Before joining the Connally presidential campaign, James Brady was also the secretary for Delaware Senator Bill Roth. There has been, as we mentioned earlier, conflicting reports about the condition of Press Secretary Brady. All three networks had reported shortly after 5 p.m., that's all three television networks, that Press Secretary Brady had died. But, as you just heard, not only White House aide Lynn Nofziger, but Larry Speaks with the White House press office both stood up in front of reporters to deny that Mr. Brady had died, that he is still alive, however, in very serious condition. As for the assailant, it's a 22 to 25-year-old man. We're getting conflicting reports on that. The D.C. Police Department say he is 25 years old. His name is John W. Hinckley, and they say he is from Evergreen, Colorado. Well, they did a little checking out in Evergreen, Colorado, and the office of Governor Richard Lamb there says that Hinckley has no Colorado driver's license and no police record in Colorado, and no record of any kind of commitment to a mental institution in the state. Neighbors in Hinckley's neighborhood in Evergreen, Colorado, said they knew very little about the family, but acquaintances from Evergreen High School said that Hinckley was quiet and friendly. Nadine Berkey, a 19-year-old sophomore in high school when Hinckley was a senior, said he was nice-looking and a real good personality, friendly and popular, and probably played football because he was kind of involved in sports. But nothing in his personality from neighbors or former high school friends that would appear to indicate that this would be in his future. The president's oldest son, Michael Reagan, a businessman in Sherman Oaks, California, is keeping in close contact with the White House and hospital officials. He says he's been given encouraging reports on his father.
We're all concerned, I believe all people all around the world are concerned, and everything is going to be, really all right.
Mike, I suppose if you're a member of the First Family, this is something that's always in the back of your mind that it could happen.
You don't really put it in the back of your mind. You try not to think about it at all. I think it's probably days like this that bring it to the forefront. It's just a sad situation, what happened. And lucky for my father and for the people of this country that he was protected and put into his limousine with a superficial wound. But it's, again, they say that the people are after the president, but there's three other gentlemen that were wounded in that very seriously. And it saddens me that something like that happens. And I just hope that they're all right and can carry on with their respective jobs that my dad's appointed them to.
What do you know about Jim Brady?
Well, I'm talking to him every probably half hour.
Do you expect to be able to talk to your father at any point soon?
Well, I would rather talk to him face to face than over the phone. I remember him calling me once when I had a boat accident at 107 miles an hour down in Houston, Texas, and was laying in a hospital bed myself in bad shape. And I would like to talk to him over the phone, yes, but I'd like to do it more in person. That's really what we're discussing. And we just want to do whatever we can to help him pull through this and show the family support so he can go on with such important job that he has facing this nation today.
That is Michael Reagan, oldest son of President Ronald Reagan. Michael is a businessman in Sherman Oaks, California, and he's been kept in close contact with the White House and hospital officials here in Washington. And he says that he's been given some encouraging reports on the condition of his father. The United States House of Representatives was not in session at the time of the shooting in Washington today. They met in a pro forma session around noon and went out about 15 or 20 minutes later. The Senate was in session, and they were debating probably their most important legislative item of the year so far, President Reagan's budget cuts. They were arguing over several amendments which would have altered the size of those cuts, put back in some money that some Republicans didn't think should be there. When the news of the shooting made the wires and generally became known, Senate Majority Leader Howard Baker announced it to the Senate. And from that point on, as of about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Senate halted all legislative business. Senator Claiborne Pell, a Democrat from Rhode Island, said the general atmosphere of all of us is one of shock and horror. He said the news of the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy seemed like only a month ago. Shortly after other news organizations had reported that the president had been wounded, the Majority Leader Howard Baker recessed the Senate, citing the gravity of the situation. Baker later spoke with reporters before going in to tell his colleagues that they ought to adjourn for the night. Baker says that he has been kept closely informed by the White House.
The White House has been good about keeping me advised momentarily as matters develop. I've talked to Tip O'Neill. I understand he's been advised, as I have been, of the president's progress and the circumstances in the situation.
Senate Majority Leader Howard Baker. House Speaker Thomas P. O'Neill of Massachusetts, who, by the way, is third in line of constitutional succession to the presidency, immediately after the vice president, was in a meeting in his office on Capitol Hill when he was notified of the shooting. Aides say that he watched the developments on his office television set with aides, as did most of official Washington. When the news began to be known, there were little clusters. A service agent and a policeman had also been wounded. Presidential daughter Maureen Reagan, who is a talk show co-host in her own right in Los Angeles, was described as being in a, quote, state of shock by an official in Los Angeles with KABC-TV. Senator Robert Dole, a Republican from Kansas and the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, was monitoring the situation along with other Republican leaders of the Senate. Dole was asked how he feels personally about the shootings.
Well, I think it's unreal from one standpoint, but on the other hand, it demonstrates again the impossibility of protecting the President of the United States. I suppose you could second guess and wonder why someone like this could be around and have access and be within 10 feet of the President of the United States, but it happens every day. I don't know how to prevent it, but it's tragic in a way. I guess we all maybe try to tighten up procedures, things of that kind, but it's sort of after the fact again.
Senator Bob Dole of Kansas. It's ironic in a way that Secret Service Director Stuart Knight had said only last week that since the assassination of President John Kennedy in 1963, significant improvements had been made in presidential protection, making such an occurrence less likely. In an interview with United Press International, Knight said that all recommendations of the Warren Commission probe of Kennedy's assassination had been carried out, recommendations which would lead to a better security around the chief of state. Knight declined, however, in that interview to go into detail about all the changes they had made. He said improved Secret Service procedures made it much less likely that a sniper could get a clear shot at a president, as Kennedy's assassin did in Dallas. Of course, in the Kennedy assassination in Dallas, the shot came from a building several hundred yards away from a moving motorcade. Some of the eyewitnesses in Washington today said that the shot, which was apparently fired by the man that the FBI now has in custody, a man by the name of John Hinckley, 22 years old, from Evergreen, Colorado. Apparently, he was no more than 10 feet from the president when the shooting began. There was a small crowd assembled out by the driveway by the Washington Hilton Hotel. It's sort of a side entrance, the entrance that goes directly into the ballrooms, and it's not the main entrance of the hotel. Nevertheless, there was a small crowd assembled, even though it was raining out. That didn't seem to keep the well-wishers and others away. And as the president emerged from the hotel, he looked up in the rain and smiled as various people shouted to get his attention and wish him well. There are some reports that the police line that usually separates the presidential press pool from other onlookers was non-existent, that reporters on the scene were intermingled with spectators from the neighborhood, presumably including John Hinckley. At a briefing at the city police department this afternoon, The police spokesman was asked about whether or not proper security measures had been taken to segregate the official accredited White House press from strangers who might wander up within 10 feet of the president. There was no comment on that. No comment either on whether or not an investigation is underway to find out if security had indeed been lax. No comment still from the District of Columbia Police on the type or make of weapon used. It was initially reported this afternoon that there was a .38 caliber revolver involved. Later that was changed to a .22 caliber revolver, which was found at the scene of the crime near the bleeding head of Presidential Press Secretary Jim Brady. John Hinckley, Jr., 22 years old, attended Highland Park High School in suburban Dallas, Texas. Highland principal Dr. E.A. Sigler said he was dumbfounded when he learned that Hinckley was a former student. Dr. Sigler was an assistant principal in 1973 when Hinckley graduated, and Dr. Sigler said that he recalled having seen Hinckley, but said that nothing stands out in his mind about the fellow. Sigler said a check of the school yearbook showed that Hinckley was a member of 3 student clubs: Youth in Government, Radio, and Rodeo. Sigler said counseling records are confidential, and he could not give any further information about the former student. Once again, this is live, continuous coverage from Mutual News in Washington, D.C., where we will give you the latest information as we get it on the condition of President Ronald Reagan, who is in George Washington University Hospital in Washington for surgery after an assassination attempt at 2:30 p.m. outside a Washington hotel. The president spoke to the AFL-CIO Building Trades Council, and upon leaving the hotel and making a short walk to his presidential limousine, was caught in a flurry of bullets, 5 or 6 shots at close range from a small handgun. Several TV networks were on scene to tape the usually routine walk from a hotel door to a car door, and there is plenty of evidence of what happened. A flurry of activity. It all happened very, very quickly. The 3, 4, 5, 6 shots went off, and immediately people ducked to the ground, and a very alert Secret Service agent walking behind President Reagan grabbed him on the left shoulder with one hand and put his right hand behind the president's head, pushed him down so that he would clear the top of the door, and then pushed him in very hard into the back seat of the car. There was some word that maybe he was pushed too hard and might have bumped himself, but that, of course, is the task of the Secret Service to, when they hear these shots which some viewers, including Mutual's Bill Grudy, described as firecrackers at first. The initial instinct is to do that, to grab the president, to grab whoever it is you're guarding, and shove him to safety. Now let's go to Mutual correspondent Paul Henderson, who is standing by at Magistrates Court here in the District of Columbia. Well, we're having some difficulty bringing up correspondent Paul Henderson from the outside. Presumably he'll get back to us and let us know the latest from the judicial standpoint. We don't know yet whether Mr. Hinckley will be arraigned this evening or tomorrow. Presumably correspondent Henderson can tell us that if he gets back in touch with us. Hinckley was taken away very quickly in a police paddy wagon to the police headquarters here in Washington, where he was held for several hours, interrogated. Some U.S. attorneys came in and went out, and then Hinckley was secreted out of the building through a tunnel entrance, away from the waiting reporters and other masses, away from any possible confrontation. The scene at the police department this afternoon was very, very tense. There were a lot of reporters on hand. There were a lot of spectators on hand. There was really no security to speak of around the police department. And it was very apparent in the tension in the eyes of the police personnel in Washington that they did not want a repetition of what happened in Dallas 17 and a half years ago, when a man by the name of Jack Ruby wandered into the crowd as the prime suspect, Lee Harvey Oswald, was being ushered down a corridor. So it's very understandable in that respect why the man was moved, the suspect, John Hinckley, was moved out of the building with no warning whatsoever to reporters. We were simply told after the fact that he had gone. He went in an 8-vehicle motorcade in the custody of the FBI. He has been charged with assault on a District of Columbia policeman, and he's also been charged with attempting to assassinate the President of the United States. Arraignment in these proceedings in the District of Columbia usually occurs in the morning. The court opens for such proceedings between the hours of 9 and 12 noon. Whether he will be detained overnight, Mr. Hinckley, and then arraigned tomorrow morning, on arraignment, of course, the proceeding where he pleads either guilty or not guilty, or whether that arraignment proceeding will occur this evening is unclear at this moment. We're standing by not only to find out whether he will be arraigned this evening, but whether or not the surgery on President Reagan has been successful. It's now been more than 2 hours, and the doctors at George Washington University Hospital operating to see what they can do to extract what we believe is a .22 caliber long bullet that pierced and punctured President Reagan's left lung in an assassination attempt. We'll try again now to go to mutual correspondent Paul Henderson for a report from his location. Paul?
Yeah.
Paul, what can you tell us?
I'm sorry, I was cut off in midstream there, almost got lost in the phone system here. I'm at the office of Federal Magistrate Arthur Burnett, who, as the luck of the draw turns out, is the magistrate on duty for criminal arraignments in the District of Columbia's Federal Courts building. The FBI indicated earlier that the suspect in the case will probably be brought here for arraignment sometime this evening. We don't know when. In the meantime, the FBI will only say that he is being held in what they call a secure location. It's believed at this point that that location may be a military reservation called Buzzard's Point, which is in, shall we say, a less fortunate area of southeast District of Columbia, near the point where the Potomac River and the Anacostia River join and flow on downstream. It's a remote base. It's very secure, and it's believed he's been taken there. There is an off chance that the arraignment itself could physically be moved to this secure location where the suspect is being held. The possibility being that they don't want another Lee Harvey Oswald incident where the suspect is himself harmed, and that's where it stands at this point.
Paul, where would the arraignment normally be held if this was a normal incident?
Well, it would be in a small courtroom just as you go into the main entrance of the federal courthouse here in Washington, D.C. It's quite close to the Capitol building, and you walk in and through the security gates, and it's a small courtroom about 20 steps down the hall.
Well, it would seem reasonable to assume that given all the security and protection they've given him so far with where they've been holding him and how they've moved him, that a secret arraignment would certainly not be out of order. Have any of the people you've talked with said anything at all about any statements that Mr. Hinckley may have made?
No, none at all. As a matter of fact, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the people here are very tight-lipped about this thing. They don't want any legal slip-ups that might mean that even though they have a case, that the suspect might walk free.
Okay, Paul Henderson reporting from the Magistrate's Office here in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Paul. We might also make a note here that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences today postponed their annual Oscar presentations, which were to have been held tonight because of the wounding of President Reagan. Those ceremonies for the Best Picture and so forth have been rescheduled, put off for 24 hours until Tuesday night. This, the Academy says, is only the third time in history that the ceremony has had to be postponed. It was put off in 1938 for a week because of some disastrous flooding in Los Angeles, and it was put off for 2 days in 1968 because of the assassination of black civil rights leader Martin Luther King. Once again, we're standing by at Mutual News headquarters in Washington, D.C., waiting for some word on the condition of President Ronald Reagan undergoing surgery this afternoon and this evening, surgery at George Washington University Hospital, possibly for removal of a .22 caliber bullet that entered his left chest and pierced his lung during an assassination attempt. Also wounded in that attempt, Presidential Press Secretary Jim Brady and a Secret Service agent Tim McCarthy, as well as a D.C. policeman Thomas Delahanty. We'll continue Mutual's live coverage in 5 minutes.